Okay, welcome everyone to today's webinar, which is What's New in Review 2016, presented by our friends at Orange Blade Consultants. My name is Nick Decker. I'm a senior industry specialist with Bluebeam Software. On manning the question and answer window is my colleague Meredith, as well as John from Orange Blade, so they will be able to answer your questions as we go. If there's items that are worth addressing on the webinar to everyone, I will do so and provide demo as well. Orange Blade is a fantastic partner of Bluebeam Software. In fact, the team at Orange Blade Consultants is proud to be celebrating their 10-year anniversary as a Bluebeam reseller this month. If you have any questions after today's webinar, they can be directed to bluebeam@orangeblade.com or call 480-559-8670. So with that, we'll go ahead and dive into a little bit of background about what Revu is, what it's capable of, and then give kind of a foundational piece of what Revu does, understanding the buttons and the workflows and things like that, before we show off really kind of the meat and potatoes of today's webinar, which is the What's New in Revu 2016, which just happened to launch last week. So with that, we'll go ahead and dive into it. So a quick slide here about kind of the project life cycle within really any technical industry. Now, the specific example is the architecture, engineering, construction workflows, and it really starts kind of up front in the idea phase, kind of a feasibility study, in through the front-end engineering, detail engineering, procurement, really kind of getting everything together, lined up, ready to go, and then you actually build the thing. And whatever that is, takes a lot of different moving pieces and parts, and then finally get into kind of operations, maintenance, and life cycle asset management, if you will. And so this is just one specific example of a project life cycle. But the great thing about Revu specifically is that it's able to flex and fit each and every workflow within this specific example, or really kind of any sort of technical workflow that you're talking about. Now, there's a few aspects of that. One, it's kind of purpose-built for those technical workflows, the abilities to kind of customize and fit, again, your existing workflows, as well as some very intensive features that really are purpose-built for the handling of documents and marking up of information. And the other aspect of that is it is a PDF software. So PDF software is not sexy in any form or fashion, but the great thing about it is that what you do within the Bluebeam Revu ecosystem is able to be translated or viewed by anyone else in any other free PDF software, and vice versa as well. So anything that is sent to you that was done in other software is able to be translated and work with in Bluebeam Revu. That is a very, very important fact and something that we'll touch on later on, but it makes for a very valuable platform when talking about the open concept, if you will, of trading of information and collaborating with a team, whether they're all in the same software suite or not. Okay, just a quick slide here about kind of the traction or fit within specifically the AEC industry in this particular case. But you can see that there's quite a large percentage of top, not only U.S. but international contractors and designers that utilize Bluebeam Revu, and this is obviously being able to kind of leverage what others have learned. It makes for actually very effective feedback loop to create a better product every year, and that's what we strive to do at Bluebeam Software, is kind of take our customers' feedback through all the different workflows that they're working through and improve the product. And that's kind of what we're going to highlight today, is a few of those particular aspects that are new to 2016 and very useful throughout this this technical world, if you will. So as I mentioned, we're going to go through kind of a foundational explanation of what Bluebeam Review is and what it can do. And it's going to be kind of broken down into these 5 parts. So you see here, start with the interface. We'll move into the markups, being able to place information on the page. The tool chest, which is basically reusing all of that information later on, not only with yourself, but the rest of your team. And then we'll get into the markups list, which is harnessing the data that you're placing on the page. And you may not even be aware that you're doing so, but there's a lot of metadata behind all the markups that you're placing on the page, authors, dates, and times, and really harnessing that and applying that to workflow. It can be very, very useful, and we'll show kind of a highlight how to do that. And then finally, we'll touch on Bluebeam Studio. That is the cloud collaboration platform that's built in with every seat of review, and what it's capable of doing, not only hosting your documents, but allowing you to collaborate with your team in a live environment. So again, this is kind of the intro. I'm going to show off kind of the list of what's included in the newest revision of 2016, but then we're going to go ahead and demo kind of the basics first before hopping back into it. So without further ado, here is the big reveal of the new features within 2016. Again, not going to go too in deep in these right now, but these are some very, very valuable tools that I'm looking forward to showing off. That being said, let's hop into the software, specifically Review. And here it is. If you've not seen it before, it's very simple, not a whole lot going on, not too noisy, and that's completely intentional. It's kind of a blank slate to allow you to fit your existing workflows, as I mentioned. For those of you that are Windows users, as I assume all of you are, this ribbon across the top should feel very familiar. So it's what we call our command bar menu, and each one of these individual menus has kind of a subcategory, excuse me, of different options or information that you're able to choose from. Now, notice as I click through each one of those particular icons or menus, these items on the left are not changing. These 7 are kind of what we call the usual suspects: new, open, save, print, email, and then Studio, which again is that cloud collaboration platform. And then there's this nondescript little button here, which is our tab access. Now, before I get too far into that, I do want to show off kind of the rest of the interface. For example, these little blue half circles here are our panels, and those allow me to access many different features within Review, just with a click of a button to kind of hide them away or extend them depending on what I'm looking to do. Now, in this particular case, I'm going to also show off what is called our profiles, and these control kind of the interface or the feel of what it is that you're looking to do within Review. Now, in this case, as I select the drop-down menu, I have a number of different options here, and these are all built into Review. So in this particular case, I'm displaying the design review. But for example, if I was working on a tablet, like a Surface Pro, for example, or really any other Windows tablet, I'd be able to go into tablet mode, and it would kind of reconfigure to enable some tablet features. Now, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and go back into my design review. But again, there's several other different options, and it will reconfigure the screen dependent on what toolbars and tool sets are necessary in that particular case. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and open some documents. So we're going to start over here in Tab Access, which, as I click on it, you'll see that it's basically a drop-down list of a number of features of Review. Now, this is kind of my master list that I'm always going to go back to if I don't know where items are. But everything that you see here is available behind one of the panels that I was popping out earlier. In this particular case, I'm going to go over to my File Access, and that's going to give me kind of a running list, or basically a master list, not only of what I've had open recently, but also kind of a some of my pinned or favorite categories as well. So in this case, I can go ahead and just hover over any one of these particular documents and get a quick preview of what it is that I'm going to view. And I'm just going to go ahead and select this first floor plan here, and it's going to open actually in the exact same view I left it or closed it in. So in this case, I don't want to be zoomed in, so I'm going to pop back to a one full page, and you'll see that it kind of fills the document viewing area, kind of this lighter gray here area that you're seeing. Now, you'll also notice that it popped open a little tab here that is basically giving me a list of all the documents that I have open. Now you'll see, obviously, I don't have any other documents other than this original one, so I'm going to go ahead and open some others. So again, maybe I want to open this A000, which happens to be my schedules and abbreviations, different items that I can go ahead and cross-reference against my A1.1.0. Now, in this particular case, I may want to open an A1.2, for example, and this one has a few markups on it, and this will all open, and I can kind of cross-reference these. But in this particular example, I may want to cross-reference my second floor plan versus my first floor plan. So to do that, I can come down here in the bottom left and select my split vertical. With this, it will basically put the same document on both halves, but with a click of a button, I can now have these documents kind of side by side and kind of cross-reference them. I can zoom in and navigate each one of these individually, and you'll notice, as I go about doing so, I can try and align the column lines if I'd like, or I can come down to my sync button and be able to navigate both of these at the exact same time. Now, as I zoom or pan, it's going to allow me to work with each one of these documents at the same time. Now, these are not actually lined up exactly X and Y coordinates. As you'll see, they're kind of shifted a little bit, which is totally fine. But if I were to, for example, need to cross-reference if there's bathrooms one on top of the other, or pipe chases to be able to, confirm if there's any plumbing issues or anything like that, I could be able to do that in this case. Now you'll see here, I have a men and women's bathroom on the second floor above what appears to be just kind of an open blank area, and so there may need to be some extra consideration for where I need to run these pipes to and from that particular bathroom. Just one particular example, but again, it allows me to work with multiple documents at the same time. Now, I could split my screen up to 16 times if I'd like, but I'm going to go ahead and unsplit and kind of clean this up and work with one document at a time in this case. So the next thing I want to go ahead and highlight is the ability, of course, to mark this document up. So in this case, I'm going to come up to my markup option, and then over to all these icons that you're seeing here. Now, if you remember, these were all grayed out originally, and that was due to the fact that I didn't have a document open. Also, if I have a locked document, both in read-only mode, or it's got some security on it, for example, these would again be grayed out because you're not able to mark up a locked document. But in this case, it's unlocked, so let's go ahead and start working with it. So, for example, I'm just going to go ahead and place a text box, and it works just like any other text box. And I'm just going to go ahead and place that information. Now, as I place that particular text box, you'll notice that I don't know what door I'm talking about. No one else does either. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually place an arrow. So place an arrow, text box, voila, I know exactly what door I'm talking about. But that was kind of a bit of a process. So instead, from now on, I'm going to start using my callout. So I can go ahead and call out an area and say, move ticketing, 2 foot south. So I can now move my ticketing desk 2 foot south, but I don't know what desks I'm talking about. It could be all of them. It could be a singular one. And so now I need to be able to call out a particular location within the drawing. Now, this is all nothing new. People have been doing this for decades with red pens and yellow highlighters trying to signify locations on the drawing. And kind of the default solution that the AEC world at least has come up with is the cloud. And so from this location, I'm able to signify that I want all clouds, or I just want a particular sum, or whatever it may be. Again, this is still 2 independent markups. So instead, what I'm going to go ahead and do is actually combine all 3 of those individual markups, the text box, the arrow, and the cloud, into one clean little markup, and place this here. So now I can go ahead and change that bike room to a concession stand because that's at the top of that particular stair, for example. That may be where I want my Starbucks to be, and that would be very easy to communicate. Now, in this case, I may also want to be able to add visual context, for example. I may not know what concession stand I'm talking about. So I have a few options. One, I can come over to my images function, or I can right-click and come over to capture. From here, I can actually basically attach a picture from my webcam or actually from my computer. Now, I have some files saved on my computer, and my webcam's facing my face, and you probably all don't want to see that. So instead, I'm going to come back again to my files that I have on my computer, and find those images. Now, I don't have a picture of a concession stand, for example, but I do, as I zoom through, we're just going to add a picture of a sliding door. Now, you'll see that little camera lens there. That is basically signifying that there is a capture or a picture attached to that markup. As I click on it, it's going to basically populate or kind of fill the screen. What's great about that is not only is it going to carry with wherever I put that markup, but it's not taking up screen real estate with an image when I don't need it. Now, anyone with Revu would be able to access this by, again, clicking that camera lens, whether they're on the Windows desktop version or the iPad, and vice versa. So a fantastic way to be able to share contextual information, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. All right. So now that I've placed a few markups, I do want to mention some others that we have. We have pins. If you're working with a touch interface, we have highlighters, which are fantastic. Not only can I do freeform highlighting, but it actually recognizes text as well. So it's a very useful way to, again, be able to signify areas within the drawing. We have lines and arrows, all sorts of other things. Dimension is a very neat tool because as I snap to content here, I can actually kind of signify what area of the drawing that I want and kind of ask, in this case, what is this dimension? And not a whole lot of typing or information that needs to be able to place. Just 2 clicks, a little bit of text, and I can now signify that. Maybe I'm nice enough to put a cloud around it, make it obvious for my architect that I need that particular dimension. Okay, so enough talking. Let's go ahead and customize these guys. So let's see here. I'm going to customize all of them at once, and I did that just by multi-selecting. And from here, I can go ahead and right-click and open the Properties panel. Now, right-click is a very powerful tool within Revu, because if you don't know what you're capable of doing, wherever your cursor is, you can always right-click and it will pop open. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and give everything a subject, maybe a subject of architectural. And we'll go ahead and change the color schemes as well. Now, you'll notice with the subject, it's not actually going to change any of the physical properties, but it will come into play here in the markups list at the bottom. And we'll get to that in a moment. So I'm going to give everything a fill as well, kind of make it my own. Now, everything that I give a fill automatically becomes opaque. So I'm going to go ahead and change it to highlight, as you'll see, and that will allow the content and the other markups to pop through. I can also change the fill opacity if I'd like. And as I move down the line, I can go ahead, change the text colors and maybe text size if I'd like, make it a little bit smaller, but let's bold it out a little bit, and be able to make, again, all that customization that I'd like in this particular case. Now, in this case, I'm going to go ahead and actually assign a custom tag. This is something that's specific to this particular drawing, and I'm going to assign myself as the responsible party in this case. Oops. Go ahead and make that a cloud again. All right. So now I've gone ahead and customized all of these. So let's start working with them. Now I could go ahead and select it and then right-click and copy and right-click and paste and then try and resize it. But that's really kind of a difficult way to go about things. Plus, as soon as I change documents, I'm going to have to redo that exact same process, and then no one else on my team can use it. So instead, what I can go ahead and do is come over to my tab Access and Tool Chest. So within the tool chest, as you'll see, there's a number of different tool sets that are already available. I can create my own if I'd like, but you'll notice here under Recent Tools, I have a running list of what I've done so far. So if I want an exact copy of that change door swing, I can place that markup here, again, place an arrow wherever I'd like, and be able to signify that without really having to go back through that process. Now, again, this is an exact copy of what I just did, which is just a click and drag. But if I just want to use the properties themselves, say, for example, this Cloud Plus is actually in properties mode. I can go ahead, signify the particular column that I need and say need column detail. There, I'm able to, again, signify that information, and it stole, or borrowed, if you will, the exact same properties as the other Cloud Plus that I placed on the page. So really useful way, again, to kind of color code all that information. Now if I come over to properties, it's interesting, that should say architectural as opposed to Cloud Plus. But again, all of those properties that I customized should carry over. Now you'll notice that I have a few other tool sets that I haven't touched yet. One is the My Tools, which basically creates a keyboard hotkeys, and then architect, contractor, and engineering. Now these are specific to the particular profile that I'm in. So if I were to change profiles, for example, we'll hop to construction, for example, and come into the tool chest. You'll notice that they're a little bit different. They're more construction specific, in this case, sequencing tools. But I'm going to go back to design review. It will bring me back to the view that I had as far as the tool sets and things. And I can start utilizing from here. Now, if I wanted to sequence, for example, the installation of, let's see, windows here. So I can start counting out which windows I want in which order. And then I want to skip back and start going this way. I'm now able to signify the sequence there in that particular location. Now, the architect may not do this, but the contractor very well could. They may try to signify to their field employees what order they want things constructed, and this is a very simple way to do that. Now, you'll notice as I come into my properties, not only is it counting those in order, but again, it's stealing the subject of the particular tool set that I'm working in. All right. So I can also create my own if I'd like. In this case, I'm not going to go into that because I want to conserve some time to show off all the other stuff. But know that it's available. We have some resources online to be able to show that. All right. So the next aspect I'm going to show is the markups list. So as I center myself kind of over this mess of information I'm placed on the page, you'll see that there's a lot of information down here at the bottom as well. So if I want to see where any one of these items are, I can go ahead and click it, and it's going to jump me to that spot of the page. Now, for example, in that dimension, you'll notice that it's capturing not only the text that I placed, but it's also signifying what type of tool that I had, the subject that I assigned to it, and who is assigned the responsibility, as well as any sort of date and time. Now, I can do that with any one of these other items. If I need to find where these items are located on the page, I just click on any one of these, and it will navigate this for me. Same with these sequences here. You'll notice not only is it capturing the text within the page, but it's jumping and highlighting to whichever one that I've selected within the markups list. Same thing goes vice versa. If I change which one I'm selecting, you'll notice that the bottom of the page is changing as well. Now, what is this useful for? And the answer is really kind of harnessing your data. Again, I allude to that, and it's very, very powerful. Now, in this case, I've got an option to assign responsibilities. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and assign several of these in the properties panel to John, who's on the line with me. Then I'm also going to assign this last one, again, as I come to the properties panel, to Meredith, who also happens to be on the line with me. Now, I've kind of assigned this out, but I may also need to work kind of simultaneously, or be able to tell them not only what this item is, but maybe the status or the information that I need to be able to convey. So in that particular case, I come over to my status column, and I can go ahead and accept or reject any one of these items. And again, this can all be customized to fit your particular workflow, but notice that it's not only capturing the status itself, but the date and time and the author that this information was assigned. I can now go ahead and sort, for example, by status, and these will kind of automatically or dynamically sort into their specific categories, or I can go back again and sort by subject. I can also filter to anything that I'd like. In this case, I just want to work with the architectural items. I can go ahead, filter to architectural, and anything that is not architectural. In this case, these, the architect markups were now kind of grayed out and no longer in the markups list themselves. So from this point, in this case, I have them all assigned to me. I'm going to go ahead and reassign some of these to John. Again, I can change my mind to whatever I'd like. Make that assignment maybe make these last few to Meredith. And now kind of recategorize or sort dependent on who's the responsible party. Now again, it's still filtered to architectural, but John and Meredith are now kind of broken out. I can see how many line items I've assigned to each. From this point, I'm going to go ahead and run a report. So, but before I do, I'll show off that this is a one-page document, as you'll see. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is run a summary, and I'll pick the PDF summary, but I can also send this information to for example, to Excel to start harnessing this data. But I'm going to pin this to the current PDF, click OK, and you now see that it's generating a PDF for me. And it's actually attaching it to the back of this drawing, since I said append. And now as I zoom in, you'll see that anything that's included in the markups list down here is also being included in the markup summary, or this 8.5 by 11 document. And you'll notice since I captured or basically attached that picture to that particular line item, it's also giving me a thumbnail of that. It's also nice enough to give me a thumbnail of where this is located. Now I may not know where the bike room is or where this particular comment is, but you'll notice my cursor actually changes to a hand with an H. That means it's hyperlinked, so if I click on it, it's going to jump me to that spot of the page. It's a very useful way to navigate and kind of distribute this out. And I could, for example, just click the email button from here and send this off to Meredith directly from here if I'd like. Now I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do is actually transition one last time within the fundamentals or kind of foundational aspect into Studio. Now I don't have a whole lot of time to spend on this, but I do want to mention Studio is kind of broken into two halves: Studio Sessions and Studio Projects. Projects works like a document management system. I can put a folder structure of information here, be able to host all sorts of different files, for example, Revit files and Navis files, as well as things as simple as Word documents. So I can host my specifications that are published to PDF, as well as the Word documents that are associated or basically printed from those, as well as any sort of revisions that may be included. In this case, there's only 2 revisions to this document, but if you have, for example, files that have several different revisions, in this case 8, I can see not only who did them, but when they made these changes and what the commentary was included when they were checked in. So very useful information, and I can go ahead and open or restore any of those older revisions if I'd like. The other half of Studio, as I mentioned, is Studio Sessions, and this is a live environment where I'm able to kind of invite individual people, and they can come in and mark up with me. I'm not going to go ahead and dive into this too much, but I do want to show the ability to kind of have the rest of your team in this live environment and talk with you. Now they're all offline currently, but I can see what document anyone else is viewing, change those documents, be able to view any of those, and then, for example, kind of run back to the records list to see where these items are taking place. For example, there was an alert to Amy Klossel of this particular item, but I don't know where this is without any context, so I'm going to go ahead and click on it. It's going to take me to that particular spot of the page. So a very useful way to navigate around your drawings again without having to explain or kind of pull up all that information ahead of time. I can run reports from here and kind of have a running records list or meeting minutes, if you will, of all the information that's taking place within this. Okay, so that all being said, let's hop back into these new features. So you'll see the feature list here. We're going to go ahead and start with batch markup summary. So I showed kind of the individual version of a markup summary, but the batch version is just as powerful, if not more so, in its ability to harness all of that data and do so on individual documents. So I don't have to do this one at a time and run reports. I can do this all at one time, kind of have a consistent structured reporting system, and then send that out to the pertinent parties very easily. The next behind that would be legends. It essentially works like a legend of a map, where you're able to kind of communicate what's the content of the page without having to dive into, for example, the markups list and all sort of data if you're working with people outside of the Bluebeam ecosystem as well. Very, very useful tool, and we'll show a couple workflows that pertain to that. We'll also highlight a bit of the Revit enhancements that were included in the Revit plugin of Bluebeam Review that are included in CAD and Extreme. Very, very useful tool to be able to export model information out of Revit into the PDF file format to share with anyone. We'll touch on a little bit of the document enhancement and document management enhancements, if you will, and then we'll really dive into the tags aspect. It's a neat power user feature, if you will, that really helps capture the data that's on the page, especially, for example, out of the title blocks and drawings, be able to harness that as metadata at a document level, and then be able to, for example, workflow off of that. And then I'll touch a little bit on the general enhancements if we have time, and also open up for questions. I am going to pause at the moment and look at the questions window. Give me just a moment. All right. Looks like all the questions are addressed for the moment. Again, please continue to populate the Q&A window, and John and Meredith will answer those as they come. Thank you. All right. So with that, let's talk about batch markup summary. I'm going to come back over to review, clean up a little bit, not save any of these documents, and actually come up. I don't even have to have documents open. But I'm going to come up to File and Batch. So this batch menu has been continuing to grow over the years. We started with just a few items to be able to, for example, place stamps and maybe flatten markups, things like that. But again, as customer feedback came in, they really wanted to start harnessing the data on the page. And that's really where the summary, batch markup summary comes into play. So I'm going to select the summary option. It's going to bring up this context menu to be able to add files to this particular script, if you will. And so in this case, I'm going to go ahead and add a whole bunch of files. And as you'll see here, as I populate them, there's about a dozen files, all with individual markups that I need to be able to understand. We'll come back to the load batch function in a moment, but essentially it would allow me to give whichever files I want to be able to pull in on a particular basis, or basically run reports repeatedly, and then that will allow me to do that process over and over again. Now as I click Next, it's going to basically prompt me to pull in whichever columns I would like. Now these are the columns out of the markups list that you saw, but I can kind of pick and choose what I want included. So I'm going to go ahead and deselect all for the moment and just pull in certain aspects. So maybe page, status, author, date, as well as maybe responsibility. And then we can always add, for example, layer if we would like, just as kind of a wildcard piece. But again, you can kind of pick and choose what you'd like, and I can go ahead and actually reorder these as well using the arrows on the left-hand side. I can go ahead and load this configuration as well. So as I go through this process once, I can save all this information and load it back for later use, just like load batch was, and save myself some time going through this process over and over again. So as I click Next, it's going to bring me to my sort and filter window. So again, very parallel to what I showed before with sorting and filtering the markups list at the bottom. This will allow me to do so with a little bit more power, if you will. So for example, I'm going to come down to the responsibility column, and I'm only going to select certain people that I want to be able to run reports to. So I may not care what Jay Reynolds or El Pizzoli need as far as their particular assigned or responsible reports for any particular reason, but I want these other 5 run. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. The other item I'm going to show is the ability to sort. Now, by default, it's going to go ahead and sort by subject, but I'm going to go ahead and sort by first. I want these kind of broken out as individual reports that I can then distribute to those individual people. Also going to kind of sub-sort by status. I want to show kind of, for example, the accepted items first, or in this case, I can descend and show all the canceled items first and accepted items at the bottom, since they're less important. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and click Next, but I could also kind of do sub-sorting based on other items as well. As I click Next, I'm going to bring to my final item of the settings window, which is the ability to run the report. Now, you'll notice I can run this report, as I saw in the summary markups list again at the bottom, into a number of different formats, including, for example, CSV, which allows me to work with it in Excel. Now, I'm going to run a PDF report. I think it's pretty powerful, and it kind of works within this ecosystem. I can pick where I want to distribute these, and I can go ahead and change this name. For example, I'm just going to put report as opposed to summary. I am going to create multiple reports per responsibility and add a date to the end of this. Now, I want to be able to kind of essentially create all 5 of those reports per person, or 1 report per individual, and date timestamp this, if you will, so they know when it was printed out, essentially giving them whatever I designate, 24 hours or 48 hours or a week or a month, whatever it may be, to take care of these particular items. I'm also going to go ahead and import a template. From here, I can go ahead. I have a maybe a company letterhead that I want to import. Go ahead and click Open, and from here I can go ahead and assign where I want the report data to land. I don't want it to cover up my letterhead here at the top or the bottom. And as I click OK, it's going to go ahead and basically populate and just squeeze the data into the window that I provided. I can customize all sorts of other aesthetics within the report as well. And again, I have the option to save batch and save config, which would allow me to, again, utilize all these settings for later use. Now, as I click Done, it's going to go ahead and create 5 reports for me. It's running it. Basically, it found 27 individual markups that meet the criteria that I gave it. And you'll notice that these 5 reports now open across the top. Now I'm going to work on D. Sanchez first, and you'll see that not only did it bring in D. Sanchez's name, but the 3-1-2016, which is today's date. Happy March 1st, everyone. Now, you'll see that I can see all of that metadata and information just like I did, again, in the markups list at the bottom. But this was all dependent on the columns that I chose in the column chooser. It's also giving me a thumbnail view of that information. So if I wanted to zoom in and see, hey, I need to verify this opening, whatever it may be, I could always go ahead and navigate back to A1.1.1 and see if I can find the right revision or whatever it may be. But instead, again, it's hyperlinked. I go ahead and click that item, and it's actually going to jump me to that location of the page as well. So I can hop back, review the next item down the list, or up the list in this case. And again, it's going to jump me to that particular spot on the page, which just so happens to be on this exact same drawing as well. So very useful way. Again, I could go ahead and shoot this off by email to D. Sanchez. If all of these files, drawings, and whatever it may be, are hosted in a network drive or on Studio or some other web-based document management system with unique URLs and relevant paths, I would be able to kind of hand this off to them, and those hyperlinks would still work. It's a very useful tool, again, without having to kind of reinvent the wheel and try and point them to a particular location. Increases that navigation and productivity. Okay, so that is batch markup summary. I'm going to go ahead and close all of these up and hop back into the slides and talk about this next item, which is legends. I alluded to legends earlier as well because it's, again, kind of functions very similar to a legends map, or map legends, excuse me. And it's a very neat feature because it works dynamically. It's always updating itself, but it functions as other markups would. So, for example, I'm going to go ahead and pop open my legends items here, and I'm going to start working in takeoff. So in this case, someone's been nice enough to already do a flooring takeoff for me. As I pop open the bottom hand panel, you'll notice that there's several different markups. And these are all individual flooring takeoffs, and they're all different types. For example, subjects of carpet and concrete, hardwood, resilient flooring, you get the idea. Now, each one of these carpets, for example, is all subcategorized out to CP1, CP2, CP3, which all have a unit price as well. So I need to be able to kind of capture and understand all that information, but I don't have any roll-up quantities down here, and I really want the ability to kind of share this with anyone, again, kind of outside of the Bluebeam ecosystem if I'd like, and have it function and really kind of translate all the information that I've taken the time to place on the page. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and select all the markups on the page, as you're seeing. I'm going to go ahead and right-click and add to legend. It's just that simple. I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new legend. You'll see that as I zoom in, I have this floating table, if you will, attached to my cursor. Now, if you're close enough to see, you'll notice that, for example, carpet has a certain quantity, in this case 9,700 square feet. Concrete's got 10,000 square feet, and it's breaking this all down for me. It's giving me the units, as well as any sort of appearance that you're seeing here. Now, in this particular case, it's a little tough to see because it's floating above some other markups and things. So I'm going to give it a bit of a background, give it a little bit of contrast. So just like any other markup, I can right-click and change the properties of this. And to do that, I'm going to go ahead and change the title in this case. And this will dynamically update. So, for example, I'm also going to include the column of material, since each one of those materials, for example, carpet and concrete, were subcategorized out into CP1, CP2, CP3. And I want to be able to understand those subcategorized quantities as well. So as I add this material and click OK, you'll now notice that these are all broken out individually. So it's basically categorizing based on the identity of each one of these line items and the columns that are included. So, for example, if I subcategorize based on statuses and things like that, which we'll show, it would be very useful as well. So the next aspect I'm going to go ahead and do is actually the physical properties. Now, in this case, I'm going to give some black outlines, maybe give it a line width of, we'll do 1, but we are going to give it a light gray fill, again, so I can see the contrast or the items a little bit better. And I'm also going to change the table style to grid lines in this case. I want it to look like a table, be able to follow the lines up and down, whatever I'd like. And the last grid lines there. The last item I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to set this as the default. Now, as I work and create other legends, for example, I can go ahead and utilize all those properties that I've taken the time to create. Now, for example, I want to show off the ability to work with this dynamically. Each one of these markups that you're seeing, in this case 1,900 square feet, is being kind of subtotaled into, in this case, the carpet. So if this were to be removed, for example, and any sort of dynamic function is going to update this table, as I click delete, you'll notice that that CP2 went from, in this case, 2,800 to, in this case, 876. So an easy way to be able to communicate that information very easily. Now, it doesn't stop just at takeoffs. So, for example, I'm going to go ahead, change my profile to punch, and start working in a punch tool set. Let's go ahead and do some carpet takeoff, or excuse me, some carpet punching. So there's door magnets here that I'm having issues with, maybe some trim base, door latching, whatever else it may be. And as I'm placing these items on the page, it is basically counting down in the markups list, just like any other markup. Now, I haven't created a legend of this yet, but I will do that just in a moment. So I can actually do that directly from the tool set, or excuse me, yeah, from the tool set settings. If I select the blue gear wheel, I come over to Legends, and I can actually create a new one. I don't want to add it to the takeoff. I'm going to create a new one, and it actually inherits, as you're seeing, the properties of the tool set that I created as a default, but the title is actually captured based on the tool set that I provided. Now, as I come over here, I want to go ahead and change the properties to this. I'm going to edit the columns. Instead of material, for example, I'm going to include the status. Now, all of these right now don't have a status, so I'm going to go ahead and start assigning statuses. So I'm going to accept that, and you'll notice that that one carpentry item becomes accepted. TB. For example, I have 4 of those, and this will actually subcategorize out depending on the tools that I need. Now, the 1 of the TB is now canceled, where the other 3 are still counted out as individuals. So very useful way, again, to work with this information. It's all dynamic, and I can share this out. Now, the dynamic aspect of it only works in Review 2016 and newer, and so this won't basically auto-update as it's worked in, for example, other PDF software or previous versions of Review, but as soon as it's pulled back into Review 2016, that will then auto-update again. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and transition again. I'm going to pause for just a moment back to the Q&A window, check on it a little bit, and then we'll talk about Revit. All right, there is a quick question as far as the ability to sort the legend, and that really kind of, what it's going to do is only count markups once. So, for example, if I were to go ahead and right-click and change this over to a takeoff as opposed to the punch key one, it will basically remove itself from this table, populate this table, and go from there. You're not able to sort like you would with a dynamic markups list where you can kind of recategorize and stuff from there. But there's a lot of functionality in the ability to come up here to edit columns and things like that, and kind of make the individual drivers based on the column that you'd like to select. I hope that answered that particular question. And as I believe I answered, the legend works for symbols, including punch keys. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about Revit. So not everyone is going to be using Revit, which is totally fine. But for those of you that do, we have a Revit plugin. Whoops. Let's go ahead and pop back out into this video here. And so Revit, for those of you that are familiar with it, you're able to assign rooms, essentially, dependent on the walls that you're creating. So this is just a quick little video that shows it. The person that's running this actually comes up to the add-ins into the Bluebeam settings, and you'll see here that there's an option to export rooms into spaces. For those of you that are familiar with spaces within Review, it basically assigns categories or sub-regions within the PDF for tracking purposes. There's also an option to export rooms to area measurements, as you're seeing there, which will allow me to basically capture the areas automatically as markups within Review as well. So from here, they would be able to create the file. As they click Create, it will populate into Review, and you'll see here on the left-hand panel all of the spaces that were created. So I have a quick example to show that translation process, and you'll see as I pop open the spaces on the left-hand panel, each one of these spaces was created in Revit and was able to translate out into Review, as you're seeing. You'll also notice each one of these quantities and the red lines, those are essentially area markups that were created automatically. So neat little feature here. If I were to come up and select all, select all, and I'm going to go ahead and add this to a legend. Oops, I need to get out of the spaces dialog here. I can add this to a legend very easily, and you'll notice that the area that is captured, and this is excluding wall areas and columns and things like that, I have 46,000 square feet assigned within this drawing. A very easy way to be able to do that takeoff without actually having to think about it. So a neat little workflow there. There are additional enhancements within the Revit dialog as well. For example, the ability to export 3D PDFs with a little bit more high fidelity than was possible previously. You'll notice that roof colors, for example, are coming over, as well as, for example, wall colors and finishes, things like that, are all coming over in higher fidelity than was possible beforehand. Okay, so with that, we're short on time, so I do want to really dive into tags. I'll just kind of mention the document management tools. There's a lot of enhancements to allow for kind of simplification of revisions and batch functionality. We have some videos about that online. Tags is a very neat feature that I do want to dive into, as I mentioned, and it really is all housed within the sets functionality. For those of you that are familiar with sets, it's a very useful tool for those of you that don't use it yet. It basically functions as a hub to navigate all your individual drawing sets as if it were a combined drawing. So in this case, I'm going to come over to sets and modify or create a brand new set. And I'm going to add individual files. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and pop in just some original files. As you're seeing here, I'm just going to pop in my architectural files. We'll go ahead and add some electrical files as well. A couple dozen files here, added very easily. Before I go ahead and click OK and create, I'm going to go ahead and come over to options. And so sorting and filtering, or excuse me, sorting and categorizing were available in 2015. There were some enhancements to that, but it really houses around this third tab, which is tags. You'll see here there's 3 already kind of auto-populated options: sheet number, sheet name, and revision number. I'm going to go ahead and add a couple more with these checkboxes that are AIA standards, discipline, and sheet type. And then I'm going to add one final one, which is drawing date. You'll notice that 3 of these will populate based on a auto mark, which will show. The rest of them, the other 3, will basically auto-populate based on the information on the page. For example, revision number, since these are the original files, will basically default to a Rev 0. As I click OK, I'm going to assign these, and it will ask me for, first, the sheet name. So I'm going to go ahead and press Select and navigate to the sheet name. In this case, it's down here in the bottom right of the title block. And I'm just going to click and drag a location on the drawing. I want to house the entire title because it's going to look in the X and Y coordinates on every single sheet that I'm trying to add. And I want to capture all of that information from every sheet. It's going to add those tags. It's going to install on the last one and ask me, hey, what's the name of this file? Well, I don't know because it happens to be a title block, or excuse me, a title sheet that doesn't actually have a name. And it's going to say, well, I didn't find anything, try again. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and skip this document. It's not pertinent to be able to add that one, but now, since I skipped it, it's going to move to the next tag, which is sheet number. Click OK, and do the exact same process around the sheet number. Click OK, and it will apply all of those tags as well. It's going to ask for sheet number on this one. Now, it's nice enough that I have one for this particular case, and as I click OK, it will assign that as well. The last particular tag that I'm going to do under AutoMark process is the drawing date. Drawing date is very neat because not only does it look for the drawing date, it knows if you don't actually give it a drawing date. In this case, a project number isn't really a date, so I'm going to go ahead and have to reselect and assign a true date, in this case, January 1st. It will auto-tag that for me. In this case, there's no drawing date for the title. So I'm going to go and skip that document again, and you'll see this this table that's created is all the information that I just assigned. So these 8 columns or so are all information being pulled from the document. For example, sheet names, sheet numbers, or revision numbers, as I mentioned, is auto-populated to 0 for these originals. Discipline and sheet type, again, are AIA standards that are being pulled from the sheet number. So first letter is A, which corresponds to architectural. First number is 1, which corresponds to plans. If I come down to E, it's electrical. E5, 5 happens to be details. You get the idea. Now, in this case, the G didn't have a date, so I'm going to go ahead and assign it one. I'm going to give it March 1st in this case, and I would be able to assign anything else within this text box by just typing within the window. As I click OK, it will finalize or basically assign at a document property level all the information that I'm applying. Now, if I come over to the document properties, you'll see this tags dialog here in the left-hand panel is all the information that I assigned to that particular item. So now I have my originals in, which is great. What I need to do now is go ahead and add my revisions. So I'm going to go over to modify my set. It gives me this prompt saying, hey, apply your tags. And I'm going to come back to my revision ones, add all of these files. And what's great about this is the naming convention does not need to be consistent. In fact, it won't be consistent in a lot of cases between different revisions, and so it's not going to know, hey, is this actually the same file? Is it two different files? It really gets confusing. So that's what this tags process is really trying to take care of. So as I click open, it basically assigns all those tags automatically for me. I didn't have to go through the process of assigning them because it's going to look in that same tag region that I assigned before. It's actually auto-populating the drawing dates as well, dependent on those locations. So, for example, this is one that I hadn't assigned yet or hadn't seen. So it's going to go ahead and basically assign it as a Rev 0, but the drawing date is March 1st, whereas some of these items at the bottom are actually revisions, and those will still be that March 1st assignment date that you're seeing here. It's, again, auto-populating all the rest of that dependent on the information that I gave it originally when I created the set the first time. And as I click OK, it's actually going to prompt me to show that it's stacking these documents one on top of the other. It's also asking if I want to pull over the markups that were included in Rev 0s, which there were markups included in Rev 0, and if I want to supersede all of those original items. Now I can go ahead and add or subtract or rearrange any of those if I'd like. But in this case, it looks pretty good because it's all dependent on the drawing number tag that I gave it. I click OK, and it's going to go ahead and replace those pages and kind of slip sheet them for me. And as I come over to my architectural files, you'll see I have not only my clean new file, but my superseded old file as well. If I come down to this particular one, you'll notice that the markups themselves are being carried over, and those were carried over from the original as well as being populated on the original with that superseded stamp. Very, very useful, and I'm a huge fan of that particular process. Now, the last step of this would be able to harness all of that data in the table that you're seeing here into a drawing log, if you will. And so that's a useful document that people use to be able to track the documents that are included and released and the revisions that come out. And that's all capable under the Sets menu under Publish and Export Drawing Log. From here, I can go ahead and assign whatever I'd like as far as the columns from that tags dialog, the tags table. And we'll go ahead and add a couple of these items you're seeing here. And maybe leave out, for example, the file path because I don't need it. Because guess what? This is going to be hyperlinked for me. Fantastic. So I can go ahead and send this to Excel or PDF. I'm going to send it to PDF in this particular case, but Excel works just fine as well. I'm going to append the date because I want this to be dated by today's date. This is when I'm running the process. This is when these are latest and greatest. And if I ever save this set again, it would be able to automatically export. And the last thing I'm going to do is change this to Orange Blade as the title. Click Done, and you'll see that I have this this PDF document, which is a running table of all the information you're seeing here. Now, in this case, I didn't actually bring over the sheet name, which is totally fine because I have the sheet number as well as all the information that is included with it. If I need to know what something is, guess what? It's hyperlinked, and it will jump me to that particular document. You'll also notice anything that has ones and zeros here. Those are the revision numbers, and so anything that has a 1 is going to be a false. Anything that's a 0 that corresponds to a document with a 1 is going to be a superseded of true. And if I click on that particular document, it should, well, in this case it did not, for some reason, take me to a document that was superseded stamp. Okay, we are right up against the clock. I do want to talk a touch about the general enhancements. One, we've enhanced the ability to align all of your different markups and really kind of allow you to have a nice, clean format to all of your documents that you're including. We added some document management windows to all the batch functionality to allow you to kind of match up revisions a little bit easier, a little bit more transparency in what's going on with that particular case, as well as, for example, XFA support. So for those of you that work with lead documents that utilize XFA PDF forms, you're able to populate those directly from within Revu with higher fidelity as well. And a slew of other items that would be included in our release notes and online. That being said, thank you all for joining me. I'm going to open it up for questions again. I believe Meredith and John have been fielding all of those as I go, but I do want to leave a little bit of time for everyone to see anything that they would like demoed as well. And then if you'd like to contact Orangeblade, again, orangeblade.com, as well as bluebeam@orangeblade.com for an email address. Thank you all. Again, I'm going to leave it open for a little bit for questions, and then we will distribute the recording as well. There was a question about profiles. Am I able to basically transfer my profile from my desktop to my laptop? And the answer is yes. So if I come over to Review, and I come up to my profile, in this case I'm going to actually create a new one. I've done a little bit of customizing, so what I'm going to do is create a new one, and I'm going to call it Orange Blade. Click OK. And this may, have all the properties that I want. I want to be able to export it. If I come over to my blue guy with the bow tie again, I can go ahead and import or export. I have to select Orange Blade, select Export, and save it wherever I'd like. In this case, I can put it on a network shared drive if I want, or in this case on my desktop, which would now have that Orange Blade profile. I could share that with the rest of my team as well. By email, for example, they double-click the attachment, and it would open automatically in Review. So there was a question about, can I transfer my entire tool chest instead of just individual tool sets? And actually, the way to do that would be to export the profile itself. So the profile gives you the option to include dependencies. If I'm going to export, there's a checkbox for include dependencies, and part of that dependency process is the tool sets themselves. So if I were to export that, those should carry over as well. If they're not, then you would, yes, have to do them one at a time, or go into the settings option and check multiple of these kind of multi-select from here. Export those out. Again, they can be attached to an email, and you can attach a whole slew of those BTX files and pull them over. All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close it out. Thank you all for joining me again. If you have questions or other options, feel free to contact our folks at Orange Blade Consultants. They're fantastic partners of ours, and happy 10th anniversary, Orange Blade folks. Thank you.